Let's talk Makaton.
You know, history was made the other week when an episode of CBeebies Bedtime Stories was signed. The actor Rob Delaney used Makaton, which is a version of sign language that he used to communicate with his late son Henry. Now, before Henry passed away, Rob and the rest of his family used Makaton to communicate with Henry, who was unable to speak. It's, as I say, a form of sign language that's used quite widely in Nottinghamshire. And to tell you more about how it all works, Tracy Clark is here from the Makaton charity. Good morning.
Good morning.
You were just explaining to me, well, let's deal with what Makaton actually is, because you know, some people might have heard of it, they might not know how it works. Can you explain?
Yes. Makaton's actually a language programme which uses... we don't just use signs, like, for example, with British Sign Language. The sign that you see in the bottom of your screen, say on the news, that's British Sign Language. And they don't use any speech whatsoever in theirs. With Makaton, we speak and sign simultaneously. So you can't use any signs without using spoken language as well. However, what we also have are picture symbols for people to communicate to. So if they can't use any spoken language or sign, they can actually point or give you symbols to communicate their needs or feelings or thoughts.
And what kind of people with certain conditions would be using Makaton?
It could be a wide variety of different conditions. Originally, when Makaton was devised, it was used with adults with learning or communication difficulties. Now it goes across the board from both children and adults who with communication or learning difficulties, somebody that might have a speech delay. Also, it's now being used for people with dementia, strokes, and lots of things like that, just to try and get routines in place. You can use it for quite a lot of daily life.
Is it easy to pick up?
Yes, I would say that, but I'm the teacher, really.
How long have you been dealing in Makaton?
It makes me feel really old. I started using Makaton when I was about 17 in a special school. So it's quite a number of years ago now, not that I feel that old.
Has it evolved over that time, or has it stayed more or less constant?
Well, we have what we call a core vocabulary. And in there we've got about 450 signs and symbols. And that's looking at children and adults' development of language. So that stays consistent. We revise it every so often and put new signs in where we need to. But we're constantly creating new signs as well, because as language develops, so does the sign that we need.
Of course.
So, for example, on Something Special last series, we had to invent the sign for selfie.
Oh, yeah.
Because that's a new word that came into the vocabulary.
What is the sign for selfie?
Selfie.
Oh, I see. So can you just describe that gesture that you just made?
If people know Makaton, the sign for photograph, it's like a little snapshot. So you're taking
you're grabbing something, putting your fingers
that
together.
Picture, yes, and pulling so it's your full hand, and you just pull your fingers towards your thumb.
Yes.
But because you want to take a selfie, it's a picture of yourself, so you just turn it the other way.
Clever. Well, it makes complete sense, doesn't it?
It does when you know it.
Yeah.
And a lot of the signs are very much like what you would expect them to be. So, for example, if I did to have a shower.
So that is your hand above your head, that's sort of
like making the spray of the shower coming over your head.
Yes. So that's a bit of signing there.
Yes.
You were also showing me, you've got a booklet there. Well, in fact, in front of the booklet, you've got, can you demonstrate these sort of laminated cards that can show a sequence of things that you might do, say, in the morning?
Yes. So some children and adults may need a bit of help or support with their routine. Mm-hmm. So what we'd use is use the symbols on either laminated card or into little books, or we could even use them on key rings. And what we would do is put these into like a structure order so they can be demonstrated what they need to do. So on this one I've got, you can eat your toast. You're going to then put on your coat, you're going to get on the bus and go to school. So we've just got 4 simple cards here to show a routine. But what people will also do, they might take this card off the Velcro, for example.
The Velcro, yeah.
Sorry about the noise.
That's all right.
And they might take this off, say a board or the wall, and come and give it to you to tell you that they might want the coat on to go outside to play. So they will use these to communicate as well. So it's not just about the signing.
So it's a two-way process.
It's definitely a two-way process, because that's what communication's about. It's that two-way process.
Yeah.
I mean, the other thing is, whether you're using signs or symbols, is to use language with it. So you must always try and incorporate the language with it, because Makaton's not there as a replacement for spoken language. It's there to assist it.
Right. Okay. Back to this, seeing as it is this combination then of these cards and prompts, if you like, but also signing. It sometimes struck me that signing it's not necessarily that it's complicated, but there are different types, aren't there? There's British Sign Language, and there are other types. Yeah. Is it a bit too complicated? Why do we need these different types of...
Well, all these languages that are out there are very specific for the people who are using them. So, for example, with British Sign Language, or BSL for short, that tend to be used in the deaf community for people that are born deaf, because they won't learn to speak, so they need to use the hands and signs to communicate. With Makaton, we're not trying to dilute that language at all. What we're trying to do is use signing alongside the word to promote communication and speech.
Yes. And as you said before, if you haven't learnt signing, this is maybe a good way to get to know some sign. I notice all the time you were talking, you do
I know.
No. It's very demonstrative, though.
Yes.
You must do that out of habit.
Yeah, I'm quite a talker with my hands.
Yeah.
But I was just wanting to say as well, going back to British Sign Language, how it does differ as well is that they sign in a different word order to how we would speak in English. So, for example, if they were saying, I am going to work, I know people can't see my hands and I'm sorry, they would sign, which is work, I go. So it's in a different word order to how we speak in English.
Right. Why does it need to be in a different order?
It's just the
I'm
way it's
asking
always
you like you
been.
invented it.
No, I didn't invent it, but that's just the way it's always been. But if you look at other languages around, like French and so on,
yes, that's
they
true.
speak in that word order.
Yeah, they say car blue instead of blue car.
Yes,
for
a
instance.
lot of people call it Yoda speak quite often, which is quite funny, but it gets the message across.
Yeah.
But yes, with Makaton, we speak and sign in that English word order.
How interesting. And you work with Mr. Tumble as well.
I do, yes.
And he incorporates some of this into some of his TV shows.
Into something special. We have Makaton all the way through that show, and we teach signs and we teach the symbols as well, and pictures to match.
How important do you think it is, Tracy, that people who, I'm thinking, do I need to use this in my daily life? Quite possibly not. But all the time I'm thinking it might be quite handy for me to pick this up. How handy do you think it might be for people to do, I don't know, an evening class or something like that, just so they've got some of this?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's easy to learn, because all you're doing is trying to learn. It's like a visual clue that you're doing with your hands to go along with how you're speaking anyway. Yeah. It is quite easy, because a lot of the signs are very similar to what you would expect them to be. A lot of them move on from the natural gesture, like drink. I'm just putting my hand up to my mouth as if I'm taking
That's
a drink.
The classic drink kind
everybody
of
does that in the pub if they're going to the bar. I'm just going to the bar
that's
for
right.
a drink.
Do you want a brew?
Yeah,
want a brew?
They're very easy to learn.
Yeah,
no.
Fascinating, really interesting. And as you say, it's not just. I think a lot of people might think, it's often children and in the school setting. And so much more in the future. It could well be for older people and dementia.
Yes.
And
a lot of
like
people,
that.
we're trialling it at the minute and getting lots of research together about dementia and people that have had strokes and things. On a personal level, I have a son with autism, and I used the symbols to help him with his reading, because the symbols are a picture clue to the text he was trying to read. So I used the symbols with him for reading. And he's a brilliant reader now. He doesn't need them at all. But another thing on a personal level, my husband has had encephalitis twice, which has left him with a severe brain injury and memory loss.
Right.
So when he came out of hospital, I mean, he was fortunate really to have me as a wife, because I introduced the symbols to him for prompts. So I've used it personally for my husband who had a brain injury too.
Goodness. Well, thank you. How do you sign thank you, by the way?
Thank you.
So it's the fingers up to
Finger
the chin.
just under the chin, and it's
you.
just thank you, just a little short movement.
There we are. Thank you, Tracy.
you.
It's been fascinating, really interesting. There we are. It's your beginner's guide, if you will, to Makaton. BBC Radio Nottingham.